Welcome back to Darwin Speaks. As promised, I will give a line show today. We'll talk about some of the teams in the top 25 and the lines on the games, and I'll just pretty much give my opinion on those. One of the games I want to start with is Georgia at South Carolina. South Carolina is favored by 3. I do like that game. I do like South Carolina by 3. Georgia has a new quarterback that will be making his first start in a major stadium such as South Carolina. It's a very difficult place to play, and I don't look at him as faring too well in that atmosphere. At least faring well enough to beat South Carolina, which is very strong on defense. Next game I want to look at South Florida at Florida in Gainesville. The line on that at the moment is 15 points, Florida. I don't look at Florida after their showing last week. South Florida has been a team that's over the past couple of years have increasingly gotten better. They've sacked their coach from last year, but it seems they still play with that same intensity. If you remember correctly, they beat Florida State last year up in Tallahassee. So I look at them as giving Florida a pretty good game. I still look at Florida as winning the game, of course, but I don't think it's going to be a two touchdown win. I'm looking at about a 10-point win on that game. Idaho at Nebraska. Again, for all those that don't know, I'm an anti-Husker. Can't stand the Huskers. They're probably the team how would I say, dislike the most out of all of college football. I mean, I wouldn't care who they played. I wish they would lose. But the line on that game at this particular moment is 28 and a half. And Idaho has proven to be a team that can put up passing yards. I know Nebraska is a team that features very complex defenses, and their main strategy is to confuse the quarterback and with lots of blitz packaging. But I think Idaho will come into the game and play fairly well. Whatever's expected of them. I don't expect them to win, of course, but I think they'll keep the game not close, but them getting beat by 30 points. I just really don't see that happening. LSU at Vanderbilt. The line on that right now is 9.5 for LSU. LSU, like I said last week or earlier this week, had a very poor showing against North Carolina that had, I think, 8 of their defensive starters out. I think over the last 5 years, LSU has held Vanderbilt to 10 or less yards, or I'm sorry, 10 or less points per game. And I'm looking at LSU. I'm sure LSU will win that game by 10 points. It's kind of hard to say. It's actually one of the type of games I just stay away from. Next game I want to look at is Iowa State and Iowa. The line on that at the moment is 13 and a half. I like Iowa State in this game simply because not Iowa State to win the game, but I look at them as keeping it close. Last year, I know they really got blown out by Iowa, and that doesn't happen too often in this rivalry game. But I'm looking at them to put up a fight in this game. Uh, Iowa by, well, honestly, I would stay away from that game. I like Iowa, of course, to win the game, and I'm looking at that game as probably being a little closer than 2 touchdowns. But with Iowa, you just never know which team is going to show up. So that's always my philosophy when it comes to a game of that magnitude. Although it's always, past history shows that it's a pretty tight game when those two get together. But if Iowa shows up um, playing Iowa football, they'll beat Iowa State really bad. But like I said, you just never know which Iowa is going to show up in that game. Florida State at Oklahoma. The line at this moment is Oklahoma 7.5. I don't know if that's some type of trickery by the bookkeepers or what, but I definitely like Florida State in that game. Will Florida State win that game? I think they will. If they don't win the game, I look at them as really keeping the game close because their offense is firing on all cylinders, which it hasn't been in the last few years. They're playing much better football. I realize they played only Samford so far, but when you look at the team and see how they execute and all that, you can see that offensively they're going to be a decent team this year. And Oklahoma has a very big problem with the pass. They, like I said earlier this week, they're very aggressive. They're not disciplined, and that's a mixture for failure. When you're playing a team that passes as well as Florida State can pass. Michigan, Notre Dame. The line on that at the moment is Notre Dame 3.5 in South Bend. I like Michigan in this game simply because I think at this moment Notre Dame is still trying to find themselves. Michigan has something to prove. They played very well last week. I'm looking at Notre Dame probably to be a little bit tougher than Connecticut. It just seems like Connecticut was not really disciplined in that game against Michigan. But I'm looking at Michigan to go into South Bend with a win. So I would definitely take Michigan in that game. Another game I'd like to look at is Miami of Florida at the Horseshoe at Ohio State. The line on that at the moment is Ohio State 9. It's a tough game to call, but I don't look at Ohio State winning by 9. The under and over on that game at this moment is, I think, 46 points. I would even look at this as being pretty much a defensive battle. Both teams prove they can score, but both teams also have very good defenses, especially against the run. Now, I don't know how Ohio State will fare up against Miami, simply because normally Ohio State doesn't face teams that athletic. But I like that game to stay close and maybe some scoring, through the air. And who knows, over and under, it's really iffy. But like I said, I don't see Ohio State winning by more than 10 points. Or the line is 9, but I don't see them winning by 10. Another game I'd like to look at that's very interesting is Oregon and Tennessee. At the moment, Oregon will be visiting Tennessee, and the points on that are 12.5. Oregon showed last week that they can put up a lot of points, and they did put up a lot of points on New Mexico. I think 72 points, if I'm not mistaken. And Tennessee, in their game, they put up, I believe, 54 points or something like that. So they showed pretty much they can score as well. Tennessee is a very difficult place to play, but I think Oregon's got enough weapons to make things very complicated for Tennessee. For them to win by 13, I don't know. I stay away from that game. I just, at this moment, you really just don't know how good Oregon is, and you don't know how good Tennessee is. So that's one of those games. It's a trap game. I'd stay away from it. Another game I'm looking at is Buffalo and Baylor. Uh, Buffalo will be playing at Baylor. The line on that at the moment is 16.5. Baylor is a team that can hurt you in a lot of different ways simply because they have a dual threat quarterback that's actually a decent passer. Buffalo's got a new coach, new regime there, but I do like Baylor in that game. I like Baylor to win by the points. I like Baylor to keep Buffalo honest, meaning I don't think Baylor's going to give up a lot of points to Buffalo. And I believe Baylor will score a lot of points, at least 28 points, and keeping Buffalo probably to about 10 points. So that's an 18-point spread right there. And like I said, the line on that is 16.5. So I'm looking at something like 28 to 10 in that game. Penn State at Alabama in Tuscaloosa, 11.5 points for Alabama. Interesting. Just like Georgia, Penn State has a new quarterback coming in that's never played in an atmosphere like Tuscaloosa. which is a very, or you could just say extremely difficult atmosphere to play in. So I don't see Penn State really giving Bama that much of a problem. The line is 11.5 at this moment, and I think Bama will cover that. I don't see Penn State's defense being where it needs to be. I mean, Penn State is normally known for a pretty stark defensive play, but right now it seems like the defense is trying to gel. So I don't look at them as giving Bama any problems at all. Bama's the number one team at the moment, and from the way they looked last week, and just from the way how disciplined they are and how hard they play, and of course playing in the SEC is going to give them problems throughout the years. But so far, the teams that I've seen so far this year, they look the best, very solid. Let me see. Are there any other teams that I want to talk about? As I'm looking at my line sheet right now, I don't see any other games that really stand out. But like I always say, if there are any questions that you have with me, you can email me at darwin_speaks@yahoo.com, and I'll get to those emails as soon as possible. I'd like to thank you all for joining me, and I hope you again will join me in my post-weekend show where I'll go over the top 25 and talk about some games that spark some interest. We'll look at the lines, how they sized up to how they were before the games, pre-game, and then how taking a look back on them and just seeing how they actually came out. So it can give you, a pretty good feel about which way you should really be looking at the lines. Now, I always tell people that ask me things about college football, especially the lines, that you can take what I say with a grain of salt, or you can take a shovel full of dirt. It's just these are my opinions. I'm not telling you to go out and put money on what I'm saying. I mean, that wouldn't be too advisable to anyone to do anything like that. But yeah, that's just the way I see things, and you can take it as you want it. But I hope I'm somewhat helpful to you all. At all costs, I hope to see you guys Sunday. Take care of yourself, and thank you very much for joining me.